Maria's alarm buzzed at 6:30 a.m., the soft hum of it waking her before the sun had fully risen. She reached out instinctively, her fingers brushing against the cold metal of her phone. As she turned it off, she glanced at the news app. A headline caught her eye.
New policy targets, family immigration, and welfare programs. Reform begins today.
The words stuck in her throat like a bitter pill, but she swallowed them down. Today was not the day for fear, only for survival. She got up and moved quietly through the small apartment she shared with her two kids. Sophia, almost 8, still tangled in her blanket, and Lucas, 11, who had grown so much taller than she had expected, his feet already hanging off the side of the couch where he'd fallen asleep. They were both good kids, though Maria had seen the weight of the world press down on them in ways they shouldn't have to carry. These were the consequences of the new administration, one that promised to restore order and tighten borders, imposing tariffs and shifting policy in ways that felt like they were reshaping the very fabric of her life. She brewed the coffee as quickly as she could, knowing it would be a long day. She took a deep breath, letting the rich scent fill the apartment. With coffee in hand, Maria sat at the small kitchen table and scrolled through her messages. The childcare center where she sent her kids for after-school care had recently sent an alert. New funding cuts, increased fees, limited slots available. The center, once a safe haven where her children thrived after school, now seemed to be on the edge of collapse. But Maria had no choice. She would have to find a way to keep sending them, or else her work at the factory would become untenable. She sipped her coffee, trying to plan the day ahead, and as the coffee warmed her hands, her thoughts shifted to Lucas's Individualized Education Program, IEP, meeting scheduled for next week. Lucas had been diagnosed with ADHD and a mild learning disability last year, and while the public school had done its best to accommodate him, the services he needed were being scaled back due to budget cuts. The school had already warned Maria that his IEP goals might not be fully supported in the coming semester unless he transferred to a specialized private school, a costly option Maria couldn't fathom affording. By 8 a.m., she was out the door with her kids in tow, the tension of the morning weighing on her like a sack of stones. As they walked down the street, she saw fewer people on their way to work. Some had been forced out by the increased price of fuel, others were dealing with job losses due to corporate restructuring, all thanks to the ripple effects of the administration's new economic policies. At the childcare center, Maria was met with a frown from Ms. Lena, who pulled her aside.
Maria,
She said in a low voice.
the state has cut down on our food subsidies. We can no longer provide breakfast to the kids. If you can, please make sure Lucas and Sophia have their own food from now on. We're doing the best we can, but
Her voice trailed off. Maria's stomach tightened. She had already started packing extra snacks for the kids, but now it was even more critical. The strain on the center was palpable, and there were murmurs that some of the immigrant children might soon be forced to leave. The government had expanded the deportation programs, and though Maria had a legal status, she knew many families in the neighborhood wouldn't be so lucky. After dropping off the kids, Maria walked the long stretch to her factory job, her mind racing. She had heard whispers of companies starting to cut back on employees, pushing automation, and reducing benefits, all in response to the sweeping policies under Agenda 47 and Project 2025. As she walked, thankfully her thoughts were drowning out the catcalls and unsavory attention she was receiving from all of the men that now felt emboldened to make her feel as gross as she possibly could. Her workplace had already rolled out measures to replace some workers with AI-powered systems. Though Maria's job was safe for now, she could sense the undercurrent of anxiety that rippled through the factory floor. How long before her shifts were cut, or the costs of her labor were undervalued? The growing uncertainty gnawed at her every day. The day passed in a blur of machinery, assembly lines, and the dull hum of air conditioning. Maria could barely focus, her thoughts frequently drifting back to her children and what kind of world they would inherit. By the time she clocked out at 4:30 p.m., she had heard that the new tariffs on imported goods had gone into effect, raising prices across the board. Her paycheck, which had already been stretched thin, now felt even lighter. She picked up Lucas and Sophia from the childcare center. Lucas was quiet, staring blankly as they walked home. Sophia, on the other hand, had her usual spark, but even she seemed to sense the weight of the new world around her. At home, Maria started dinner, rice and beans, an affordable staple. But she had to make do without her usual avocado, as the price had shot up. She squeezed her eyes shut for a moment, trying to push the frustration away. It was all too much. The tariffs, the threat of deportation, the increased costs of everything. There's no more coffee for tomorrow morning. So much for that luxury. And now the possibility of having to find a new school for Lucas, just so he could get the support he needed to succeed. But after the dishes were done and the kids were tucked into bed, Maria allowed herself a rare moment of peace. She sat at the kitchen table with a glass of water, reflecting on the things that hadn't yet been taken from her. The love she had for her children, the moments of laughter they still shared, the resilience she saw in their eyes, despite the world around them shifting beneath their feet. She whispered a quiet promise to herself.
I will fight for you both, no matter what.
Tomorrow, the fight would continue. But for tonight, Maria allowed herself to savor the small moments, the ones she knew she could protect, even in the face of everything that had changed. And that would have to be enough for now.